Donald Trump launched a war, not with soldiers or tanks, but with tariffs. A trade war that would shake global markets, fracture international relationships, and flip modern economics on its head. Love him or hate him, Trump didn't just make headlines. He rewrote the rules of global trade. But what really happened? Who won?
She's a train wreck who is totally unqualified to be the President of the United States of America. There are some people who thrive under pressure, and there are some people who crack under pressure. She's a cracker.
Who lost? And was Trump right all along? Let's dive in. Part 1. Why Trump declared a tariff war. Donald Trump entered the White House with a mission: put America first. He believed the U.S. had been ripped off for decades, especially by China. Factories closed, jobs vanished. And America, he said, had become far too dependent on foreign powers. So, what was the plan? Tariffs. Tariffs are taxes on imports. The goal? Make foreign products more expensive so Americans buy domestic. His first big move? A 25% tariff on steel, 10% on aluminum. Trump said it was about national security. America had to control its own steel production in case of war. Then he turned to his main target, China. Billions in Chinese goods were hit with tariffs. China struck back hard, and just like that, the trade war began. Part 2. The fallout begins. Markets shook, the Dow dropped, and American farmers, many of them Trump voters, got caught in the crossfire. China slammed U.S. soybeans, pork, and cars with retaliatory tariffs. Billions in exports, gone overnight. Trump responded with a $28 billion bailout for farmers. But it wasn't just agriculture feeling the heat. Prices for everything from washing machines to beer started creeping up. Companies scrambled. Some absorbed the costs. Others passed them on to you and me. Harley-Davidson? They announced a move overseas to dodge EU tariffs. Trump was furious, but the message was clear. Trade wars are messy. Part 3. Winners and losers. So, who actually benefited? U.S. steel producers, at least short-term. A few manufacturing jobs came back. Trump earned major points with his base for standing up to China. But farmers lost billions. Consumers paid more. Small businesses took a hit from higher supply costs. Even companies like Apple and Tesla felt the squeeze. The result? A high-stakes game of economic chicken. Part 4. Did it work? Let's get to the scoreboard. Did the trade deficit shrink? Nope. It grew. In fact, in 2020, it hit a record high of $916 billion. Did American jobs come back? Some. But economists say more jobs were lost than gained. Did it slow China down? Barely. They rerouted trade, built new partnerships, and kept moving forward. Trump's goal was to change behavior, and in some ways, he did. Part 5. Political aftershocks. Trump's tariffs didn't just impact economics, they blew up global diplomacy. Allies like Canada and the EU, furious. Even some Republicans weren't on board. Senator Ben Sasse called it a tax on American families. Others said it was the bold move America needed. The debate went deeper than dollars. This was a battle between globalism and nationalism. Free markets versus America first. Trump didn't just take sides, he declared war. Part 6. The long game. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Trump's tariffs may not have hit every target, but they changed the game. Even under Joe Biden, many of those tariffs stayed in place. Why? Because America started rethinking its entire relationship with China. The pandemic made it worse. Made in China suddenly felt risky. Supply chains snapped. And the idea of bringing jobs back home? It wasn't just political, it was survival. Globally, Trump's message echoed. India, the EU, even China began shifting to economic self-reliance. The age of blind globalization, it was over. Closing. Was Trump right? So, was Trump's tariff war a stroke of genius or a self-inflicted wound? Here's the truth. It didn't fix everything. It didn't collapse China. It didn't bring back all the jobs. But it woke the world up. It forced nations and corporations to take a hard look at the system, and it put economic sovereignty back on the table. Call it reckless, call it visionary, but don't call it irrelevant, because the effects of Trump's trade war are still being felt today. It started with tariffs, steel, aluminum, a trade war unlike any we'd seen before. But what if this wasn't just about trade? What if the economic shots fired by the US triggered something much bigger? A shift in global power, a new alliance, and a silent counterattack led not with bombs, but with banks, ports, and currency swaps. Welcome to the real story behind BRICS versus the West, and how China might still win the trade war. President Donald Trump launched tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese goods. The message? America was done playing nice. Factories were closing, jobs were disappearing, and China, many believed, was gaming the system. Tariffs were supposed to fix that, level the playing field, force China to play by US rules. But instead, they may have sparked something much more dangerous. The rise of a new economic order. While the US was targeting China, a quiet coalition was growing stronger in the background. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. 5 nations, different cultures, different histories, but one shared goal: break free from Western dominance. Together, they represent over 40% of the global population, about a quarter of global GDP, and massive influence over energy, commodities, and manufacturing. What started as a talking shop is now turning into a strategic counterforce. And who's the biggest player? China. In 2014, BRICS launched its own financial weapon, the New Development Bank, an alternative to the World Bank and IMF. Then came currency swaps between members, trade deals in local currencies, not dollars, and calls for a BRICS reserve currency backed by gold, oil, and gas. This wasn't just economic cooperation, it was economic resistance. And while US sanctions and tariffs tightened, BRICS started weaving a new web of trade and finance, one where Washington had no control. China didn't just react to Trump's tariffs, it pivoted. They doubled down on domestic innovation, green energy, digital yuan development, and stronger ties with the Global South. They poured billions into their Belt and Road Initiative, building railways, highways, and ports across 70-plus countries. Their message was simple: if the West shuts you out, we'll build the next door. And BRICS became a key vehicle in that mission. The US dollar is still king. But cracks are forming. For decades, global trade, from oil to electronics, ran on the dollar. That gave America enormous power. But now, more countries are diversifying their reserves, trading in yuan, rubles, and rupees, and joining BRICS-led payment systems that bypass SWIFT. China is pushing the yuan into energy markets, even convincing Saudi Arabia to accept it for oil. It's not about replacing the dollar overnight. It's about weakening its monopoly. And in a world tired of financial sanctions and dollar dominance, that's a tempting offer. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the West hit back hard, with sanctions. Banks frozen, assets seized, trade cut. But something unexpected happened. Russia didn't collapse. Instead, it pivoted to China, to India, to BRICS. And China used the moment to test its own systems. More yuan-based oil deals, more trade with sanctioned economies. The message was clear. If the West turns off the tap, BRICS will build a new pipeline. BRICS is no longer just 5 nations. Over 40 countries have expressed interest in joining, including Saudi Arabia, Iran, Argentina, Egypt, Indonesia, United Arab Emirates. The Global South is leaning east. And if BRICS expands to include major oil and gas players, it could create a resource superbloc. Control over energy, agriculture, manufacturing, and data. All outside the orbit of Washington and Brussels. Here's the irony. Trump's tariffs were designed to isolate China. But in doing so, he may have accelerated its independence. By cutting off access to Western systems, he forced China and others to create alternatives. Today, the U.S. is still powerful, but it's no longer unchallenged. China, through BRICS and beyond, is quietly building a world where it doesn't need America's permission to trade, invest, or grow. Now, let's be real. BRICS has problems, political differences, border disputes, like China and India, and wildly different economies. It's not the Avengers. It's a fragile alliance with big ambitions. But if China keeps investing, if more countries sign up, and if global frustration with the West continues to grow, BRICS could evolve into something very real, very fast. This is not about next year, or even the next 5. It's about the next 50. The U.S. rose to power after World War II. Its dominance has lasted nearly a century. But empires fade, and challengers rise. China isn't betting on today's headlines. It's betting on 2030, 2040, and 2050. And BRICS is its long-term play to remake the rules, not through war, but through trade, technology, and tactical patience. So, can BRICS really rival the West? Maybe not yet, but the seeds have been planted. And if China gets its way, the world won't be ruled by just one currency, one alliance, or one superpower anymore. It'll be a multipolar world, one where Washington has to compete, not command. So here's the question. Is the future being written in Beijing while the West is still looking backward? Because if so, then the trade war wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Smash that like button if this opened your eyes. Drop a comment. Is BRICS the future, or just a paper tiger? And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives on money, power, and the world's next big shift. Because whether you love it or fear it, the old world is fading, and the new one is being built, brick by bricks.